ultimately, like when you're able to more deeply and gently take care of yourself, then you're going to be so much more creative, so much more present, so much more energetic, and you're actually literally going to be able to love your family better and do your work better if you're there for yourself.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And I feel like we keep leveling up our guests, and it feels really, really good. And I'm really excited about today's guest and this really this marriage of art and poetry and all the stuff that you and I do all the time, this transparency, mental well-being, improving relationships thing.
Yeah, he's amazing. I'm so excited. Such an honor having him on with us. And his work is beautiful. If you don't follow him, start now, right this moment.
Yeah.
And find one of his quotes and tag us right now. Find one that resonates for you, one of his quotes, poetry, tag him, tag us at ignited.me, at Dr. Adi Jaffe, and at sophie.jaffe, and just let us know what resonates and inspires you. I have so many of his quotes saved from over the years. To have him as a guest is such an honor.
Yeah. So Yung Pueblo, we don't want to get obviously too much into the conversation we have with him there, because we talk about the origin of how he got to do this, but I think it really connects to our review of the week. So can I get a drum roll, please? Aboard 91, Raw Beauty. I follow both Sophie and Adi on Instagram. I love how honest they are on there and on this podcast. Vulnerability is truly a beautiful thing that can create so much positive growth in our lives and of those we love. Keep up the good work, Jaffe family.
Sweet.
Thank you so much for that. I was reading that review and I was thinking about how for Yung Pueblo, that was the entire underpinning of what he did, right? Like he started it as a Tumblr account. Like he started as just a way of posting his poetry, posting his inner thoughts, never really thinking that it was going to become anything.
Yeah.
And, you talked about vulnerability in the review. And I think this guy is one of those people that just shows you the power of true vulnerability. You look at his entire feed and it's just his innermost thoughts.
His heart. Yeah. It's so beautiful. It actually reminds me a little of Atticus in that way, who was
Totally.
a past.
Yeah, 100%. So Atticus, I feel like, does this really amazing thing of digging deep in the masculine into your feelings about romance and intimacy and women. For Yung Pueblo, it's a much broader canvas, and it's almost like a free-flowing thought, just very well written. He's an amazing writer, but it's any whim, any thought that he has that is vulnerable. It's almost like that's the only requirement to be included in his feed, is it has to be vulnerable.
Right. Yeah. He's
really
beautiful.
Cool. Yeah.
An honor to meet him.
And you have a quote for us, right?
I have a quote. I actually probably should have pulled one of his quotes, but I have this one that reminds me of him. It's by Rupi Kaur, and it says, "The world gives you so much pain, and here you are making gold out of it. There is nothing purer than that."
That's beautiful. It also relates to that review.
It does.
By the way, I didn't say it before, but send us your deets so you can get our care pack.
Yes.
I'm going to start speaking in these little acronyms like you guys do all the time. A little shorthand of everything.
Well, it's not.
Let's not?
Yeah.
Soon we will just talk in single letters.
No.
It was VP pack.
Let's not.
All right. I think that this concept of vulnerability becoming your power is obviously, since Brene Brown's talks and her books and all this amazing stuff that's been out in the world for like a decade now, has really cemented itself. Not just for women, where I feel like it really started, but for men. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. You guys are going to hear the audio with Yung Pueblo. But for those of you who are in our VIP group, we'll release some little video clips of the conversation we had with him. It's so cool how for some people now that's their superpower.
Yeah.
Is they're vulnerable.
I think it definitely is for us. And that's why we resonate with people that do the same. And it's what people love about us. Whenever I say like, why do you follow along? Like, what is it that resonates? It's a mixture of a lot of things, but the core is that it's vulnerability and rawness and speaking our truth, and even when it's messy or not fun to talk about. And I loved in this interview that we did talk about anxiety, and I think just normalizing these, mental health things that come up, just like we do about everything else. I think it's all under the umbrella of wellness, and I think it's really important to address. And I was on a trip last week.
Where?
In Mexico, in cool. Punta Mita, with a bunch of really cool, inspiring humans. And Mike Lee and Angie Lee came to speak to our group about their company, Soul CBD. And Mike, if you don't know, is a pro boxer and the co-founder of My Soul CBD. And honestly, one of the first CBDs that I've used since CBD has been trendy in the last few years, that actually I feel immediately. And I'm really impressed by that. And I hope to partner with them soon because I think they're really awesome. But Mike was talking about his own anxiety going into the ring, being on TV in front of thousands of people, being, in a stadium in front of thousands of people, and the anxiety that comes up. And he taught us some breath work. And one of the things that stuck with me, and I'm already using with Leo, I've used it 3 times in the last weekend since I've been home, is it's an in-breath for 4 counts. You hold for 7 counts and then release for 8 counts. So it would be something like inhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1, holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhaling for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then repeat. So you can do this on your own anytime you're experiencing anxiety or stress. In reference to Leo, I was telling him anytime that he feels like he wants to lash out or yell or fight or hit someone back, just to walk away and take this breath, and that can be his power, is in redirecting that energy. And it might not work right away, but I think in things like mental illness, it does feel like I've been in, bouts of depression and, bouts of anxiety, and gone through times in my life where it's been so challenging. I felt like it was crippling. So having these little tools and tricks like breath work, CBD, talking to a friend, all of these things as a way to express what you're going through and move through it with more ease and hopefully get to the other side is so powerful. So for him to speak so publicly about it and to turn it into this magical thing is great. And he talked a lot about sitting in silence, meditation, and how that's been transformative for him. And just knowing that there's all these different ways to meditate. There's all these different ways to breathe. You can take a breathwork class and do something completely different every week for 12 weeks if you take a breathwork class. So just knowing that there's a way to unlock all sorts of magic and move through a lot of troubling times if you start to really focus on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really think you guys are going to love this interview. Yep. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back after this little shindig.
Enjoy.
Bye.
This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fixes all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our chat. We are honored. We're honored to have Yung Pueblo in the house today. Poetry, meditation, mindfulness, spirituality. I think that's sort of the word cloud that I see in front of my face as I talk to you. And we've had another poet on before, and I love the platform, like seeing the marriage of social media and writing and the kind of the immediacy of the communication and the contact you get to have with your fans. I have people like Ignited fans send me Yung Pueblo quotes.
Oh, nice.
Multiple times every week. And so having you on is amazing because I know our listeners are already tuned into what you do. Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through a little bit how does somebody who's focused on spirituality and meditation and writing and poetry in this really, really beautiful way find and create and cultivate this platform?
Yeah, I think so. It really began when I started going through my own realizations that I needed some help. Like I needed to do something about all of these patterns that were dominating my life, particularly sadness and anxiety. Around 2011 and 2012 was sort of like the big breaking point, and just realizing that I needed to start peeling back these layers and start really doing the inner work before inner work became popular. And that led me into not only developing new habits where I stopped using like really hard drugs and treating my body really harshly with, poor eating and no exercising. So I really started taking care of myself. But I not only did that, but started developing honesty with myself and started to really engage with what was actually happening in my mind and what I was trying to run away from. And that then led into starting the practice of Vipassana, and I'm going to 10-day courses and, these silent 10-day courses. And that really began the deep healing for me and started really showing me the nature of the human mind and how, erratic it can be and how much we can cause ourselves a lot of misery. And after I did a few of those courses, I started realizing that some real healing was happening. And I wanted to, I've always been like a thoughtful guy. Like I live a lot in my mind. And I wanted to explore these topics that I didn't, nor do I have like full mastery over, I have a lot of healing to go. But I wanted to just explore them and see if other people were also on the same page. So I just went to, took to Instagram because a lot of people were there at the time. And what I was most excited about, especially in the beginning, was just kind of letting people know that real healing was possible, and not by directly telling them like, oh, like I healed myself, like more so just being, talking about these things in poetic manners or like more indirect ways where it feels a little more universal than just about like, this is my story,
That's so cool. It reminds me of younger, like high school, college, and having a journal and writing my own poetry and my own songs, but there was no public place. Yeah. And also at the time, because you're right, doing self-work wasn't not just popular, it wasn't accepted. Like, yeah, I when I'm talking about this, it's in upstate New York, et cetera, so more rural kind of areas as well. And so it felt secretive and private. Like I had my journals, I think some of them are still in this house somewhere, and maybe that would be cool to pull out at some day. But what I'm hearing is you had your own experience, and then pretty quickly into that experience started sharing publicly your own journey.
Yeah, different things that were really sort of like crystallizing. I remember one of the big ones in the beginning was just understanding that things are always changing, and that because things are always changing, that means that my mind isn't going to stay the same. Like if I felt a lot of damage in the past or I felt a lot of trauma, that trauma is also mutable. It can become something lighter if we take ourselves in that direction. So to me, this stuff was really mind blowing. And all these little poems would come out, that felt, I don't know, in the beginning, it felt like really special because a lot of them would just kind of like dawn on me. And I would quickly write them down and see if people were into them. And it was a mixture of the two. Like I would write poetry in the beginning, but I also wrote a lot of essays. And over time, I started realizing that the format, it was like a lot more, accessible to people if I would capture the main idea or a poem in an image and then explore the topic more deeply in the caption in the form of a little essay. But it took time to figure out that format. And it's been fun. I let people know, like, I don't know everything. I'm more than anything, I'm a student and I'm an explorer. Like I'm just exploring my own mind. And to me, meditation is this giant experiment. And I want to see what's happening in this mind and how that teaches me things about the universe and how that shows me how, all minds are really the same.
Yeah. I mean, that is spirituality to me. I mean, that is all things you spoke of, from mindfulness to meditation to yoga, if it's a spiritual yoga experience and not just about asana, physical asana. Spirituality is constantly rediscovering yourself and the world and your relationship to it and being open to change, as you said. That is spirituality. Like in this month of spirituality for dummies, like you just said it.
I love that we're talking about spirituality because one thing that whenever I have events, I like to let my audience know that I don't often write about, if you look at my work, I don't even use the word spiritual, right? A lot of it, like I want to shift the idea that, this is life and then this is spirituality over here to the side. When in reality, like you should know how to use your mind. You should know how to deeply engage with your heart and what's inside of it. And knowing how to understand yourself and having ways to deal with your inner program so that you can be happier and freer. This isn't really spirituality. This is life. Yeah. To me, it's like an essential part of life that will help you be a much more effective, kind, loving, and intelligent human being.
I just want to say something really quick. Yeah, I think the same way that self-care used to be considered selfish, the amount of massages, facials, yoga classes, things that I go to in a month just for me, and I'm a mom of 3. Mm-hmm. Honestly, in the 90s, that would have been really selfish. Like people in my community would be like, what does she do all the time? Like another massage? Like that seems really self-absorbed, And now it's like, that is my sanity, is that time for myself alone where I can think and breathe and connect to, yes, that spiritual side to who I am. And self-care is part of the paving way. The more we take care of ourselves, the more we can hear our voice, the more we can connect to our intuition, the more we can connect to these bodies within us that no one else sees or feels, or, maybe they do if you're in an intimate relationship, but it's your relationship with yourself. So the more that we can take care of ourselves, self-love, self-care, the more that we can hear the voices of that connection to source, to the connection to ourselves, our intuition. Mm-hmm. And like you said, that should just be the way we take care of ourselves. It doesn't have to be called spirituality, but I think that it's a process just like anything else. And so for someone just starting out and listening and doesn't have these connections to self or to source, it is kind of breaking it down into more basic, just connecting to that voice, connecting to yourself, right? Like it doesn't have to be labeled spirituality.
Well, I'm hearing even exploring yourself versus even, right? Because we're always connected, but I feel like, I'm saying yourself, you and yourself are always part of the same thing. It's just so many of us have limited what that means.
Well, and we get clouded by society. We get clouded by other people's, especially in the world of social media, which I do want to talk to you about that a little bit, since you've had kind of your finger on the pulse and you've been a part of this wave as far as I remember. And I've been on Instagram since it started. How do we stay clear on our path when information is constantly bombarded to us and at us? Like how can you?
Yeah.
Away for 10 days, right?
Yeah. First, I wanted to say thank you for role modeling the effectiveness of self-care, because I think like even you said you're a mom of three, like of course you have to take care of yourself. Like how are you gonna like raise kids if you're not taking care of yourself? Like how are you gonna raise them effectively and well? So to me it's like I think that idea that as a parent or even as an individual in a corporate office that you have to like martyr yourself,
Right.
that has to go away, because ultimately like when you're able to more deeply and gently take care of yourself, then you're going to be so much more creative, so much more present, so much more energetic, and you're actually literally going to be able to love your family better and do your work better if you're there for yourself. So that's why, like I tell people a lot of times, especially during turbulent moments, that's the time when you have to really put your foot down and make sure that you're doing your practices, right? If you meditate, make sure you meditate. If you do yoga, make sure you do it, whatever it is, or you're going to see your therapist, or you're doing, whatever it is, like make sure you're doing that, especially during the turbulent moments, because that's when, you need it most so that you can be fully present to what's happening. But I think in regards to like social media, it's a crazy place. I think it's an amazing place. But it's also kind of like the wild, wild west, like there are very little rules and people get an amplification of whatever it is that's inside of them. So like who they'll follow, it can either help you increase your depression or it can help increase your inspiration. So it really matters like what you want from it. And I try to use it in that way. I make sure to like follow people who also inspire me, or other writers or artists that I'm like, wow, that work is amazing. And not so much like it's following things that inspire me as opposed to things that make me crave more, because it's so easy to fall into that, like, just, that path of just like following, wanting more, but wanting more is just not going to bring you satisfaction. And the other thing that's like really simple is like, I love that timer that Instagram has added. Like I put myself at an hour and a half, and when it's like hour and a half, I'm like, all right, I got to cool it. I got to put this phone down.
Yeah. I mean, God, there's so much to unpack there. We were talking earlier about the spirituality word, almost when putting it out. And I'm one of those people for whom that's really loaded. That's a very loaded word.
Yeah. Right.
But I think that for me, at least, it was because spirituality was religion. That's the connection I made into literally the last 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, it was a very recent development that I was able to start unpacking the two, right? And spiritually, that's what I was saying before, is we're all connected, is we're all having some spiritual experience. We can be blocking it, right? And deciding not to go further down that path. And that self-exploration, if you just literally look at the base of the word, right, is spirit. Like we all have our spirit. We say we're spirited. We have other ways of using that same root in a way that is not that scary. Like, oh, he's really spirited. Or, he has a really light spirit or a really heavy spirit. Like we can talk to one another about the self-connection to spirit and our own. And I think for me, that's where I found the easy way in right off the bat, is kind of like, okay, well, what do I want that spirit experience to be like? What do I want to resonate as? How do I want to feed my spirit? And when that started happening, it was about paying attention to what's going on inside. Because if I'm not sitting there listening to it, then I don't know what it needs. And then I am feeding off of what other people are telling me I need and trying to get, right? You're always looking for the next car or the next piece of clothing or the next amount of money in your bank account that will feed. But if you don't, and for some people that, by the way, actually feeds them. But for a lot of us, we need to turn inward and find out what we really want, right? And what the internal craving is. And I think for me, that's what this month is about for a lot of people, because I absolutely am one of the novices on spirituality. And talking to people like you who help kind of dig that out, and maybe not talk about spirituality per se, but allow us all to look inside and become more spirited and more fulfilled.
Yeah, I love that, because I mean, there's a lot to say, but there's just, I try to really keep my writing focused around how important and how valuable it is to decrease the density of your mind. Because it's, I really don't tell people what to believe. I just say, like, this is what I've found so far, like, to be true inside of me, and other people, agree or disagree or whatever it is that they do. But, I, to talk. So, it becomes so much more clear about what you actually want to do with your life, what your real aspirations are, and what you actually believe in when you start dealing with those layers in the mind and start coming in contact with what's happening inside of you. And not just in a way where you're knowing it, but you're actually doing something about it. Because a lot of people don't understand that it's in the subconscious of your mind that all these old emotional histories, all these old accumulations of this sort of dense energy that we keep carrying into the present over and over again from the past. And we keep replaying these scenarios with all the people that we come across. The same reactions over and over. When these reactions are controlling you, as opposed to you deciding, oh, I'm not going to do that again, then you literally live in a way where you're just multiplying your old conditioning over and over. And if this conditioning is so heavily layered on top of your mind, then you're not going to know what your real aspirations are. You're not going to be able to, like, intimately connect with yourself, to be able to not just see the joy in life, but to be able to understand life. And that's why I think it's important when people say, like, I don't know what to do with my life, or I don't know what I really believe, or anything. It's like, well, to me, it's like, come in contact with your mind first.
Yeah.
Clean your mind up, like literally, like clean your mind.
Yeah.
And then you'll have so much more clarity as to what you believe. And it's funny to me because there are people who follow me who have, like, all these different religious backgrounds, all these different beliefs, but at the end of the day, what we all have in common is that our minds can be healthier and our minds can be healed, because we've all experienced very intense emotions in the past. So dealing with that aspect of human habit, and I like to call it human habit, like all the fear, the craving, the ego, all the aversion, the hatred that we feel, these things have been layered on, not just from our own personal moment in time, like our own life, but they come from, like, our lineages, from our families. They come from evolution. Like, evolution has taught us to be afraid. Because why? Because it keeps us alive. But that fear doesn't help us be happy. So being able to live beyond that and actually unpack those layers so that human habit doesn't dominate your life, but instead you can live from a real human nature that is just full of an abundance of creativity, energy, and a beautiful ability to problem solve.
Absolutely. We talk about that concept of the patterns and the rituals you've been stuck in forever. We had Bruce Lipton on once. I don't know if you ever heard of him or not, but we had him on the podcast, and he talks a lot about, the biology of these patterns getting literally physiologically stuck in us.
Interesting. Yeah.
And if we don't do the work to release them, we're actually kind of running on autopilot, right? The vast majority of our life is actually run on autopilot. Other people have told you what you're supposed to do in school, how you're supposed to get a job, where you're supposed to go live, who you're supposed to be with, what your life is supposed to look like. And if you don't pay attention, if you don't tune in and listen, you kind of just follow those patterns. You just follow what has been fed without consideration, without actually, for so many people, stopping and taking a moment to just understand, how am I being actually affected by these patterns that I'm pursuing constantly. I deal with addiction and mental health a lot, and almost invariably the people who come to me struggling with things in either one or both of those categories have at some point been told that they're not okay, and then have done everything they could to essentially agree with that message,
right?
Cover up that internal voice, right? So they drink heavily so that the voice gets shut down, or they use drugs to literally change the way they behave so that they match other people better, or to fit in with people who otherwise would have rejected them. And so instead of listening inward, the idea is, what can I bring in from the outside to make myself more like what people want me to be? And what ends up inevitably ensuing is complete misery.
Right. I love that you brought up Bruce Lipton's work. I have to look into it more because and I've heard, I think it was Dr. Dan Siegel said something similar, that basically the way that you behave, it's the way that your like neurons they'll fire together, and that'll be reinforced over and over. But I'm not a scientist, like I'm not a biologist or a physicist or anything like that. So to me, like all my experience of that, these are things that I can feel because I spend a lot of time meditating. So I can feel that when I go to a retreat and I come back, there's a lot more space in my mind and like malleability in my mind. And then and then there are moments where you're letting go and you're like meditating and your mind's very silent, calm and quiet. And you can feel like this really rapid and subtle unbinding. It's almost like all these knots are just being like released over like really, really, really quickly. And then you leave there and you're like, oh, like I feel like my mind's lost 100 pounds. And 100%. So like understanding that there's like I know that something's happening biologically and chemically in my mind, but being privy to that work, I just know that it's actually happening because I see the results in my actions in my daily life.
Yeah.
100%. I lead yoga retreats. I've been teaching yoga for 10 years and now I don't have the luxury of teaching weekly or regularly, but I do workshops and one international retreat every year. And it's always my check-in. It always has been my check-in, whether I'm leading or taking a retreat. But I do, even now, even when I'm leading the retreat, I'm also taking. And this year I really allowed myself we just got back in October. I'm going through some like huge up-leveling in my life right now. We just bought our first home and
congrats.
Thank you. And it's our dream home and it's in LA and we never thought we would be able to have a dream home in LA. And, I'm all the things. I'm feeling insanely abundant in every area and every direction of my life. But it's like the expansion is overwhelming and truly like it's like
no, I know. Yeah.
Growing pains. Like my older boys are 7 and 9 and they tell me all the time about their growing pains and they can use their words to describe the way it feels for their bones to be growing. And I feel that. Like I feel that in my bones for different reasons. Like I'm growing in other ways, but the way that they explain it is exactly the way I feel in my life right now. And when I went away to the retreat, I really got to sit with it. And it's always a check-in. Like I remember 3 years ago, I co-teach with one of our best friends, Rochelle, who was a guest on our podcast on trauma. And we teach, and she teaches this amazing somatic dance experience. I don't know if you've heard of Koya before, but it's a healing dance. And you dance to your darkness, you dance to your light, you dance to all different aspects of your life. And 3 years ago, based on where I was in my life, dancing to my darkness was the most challenging. And I remember like the way it felt, the way it showed up in my body. It was really challenging. This year, 3 years later, because of the work I've done since then, the darkness was easy. I breezed through that. But dancing to my celebration and my love and all the beauty that is in my life, because it's so overwhelmingly beautiful right now. And having that perspective, like, yes, physically away. I was in Mexico. I was in Sayulita, down a dirt path, far, far away from the closest air, but also just being away from my normal distractions of life, of children, of to-do lists, of responsibilities. I think it's all of that compounded into one when you go away, but then also concentrated so heavily on dancing to your celebration, your love, all the beauty, all the relationships, all the good, all the positivity. And I like completely let myself go and was sobbing, uncontrollably sobbing. And that I feel that when I really let myself enter into the space of a retreat mindset. And I came back and I felt the fullness of my life much more. And then slowly, day by day, the skin like folds over and grows new skin.
Right.
Things start to compound again. And there's a sadness to it because it's like, I wish I could just live my life as if I lived on a yoga retreat. But at the same time, it's a beautiful check-in. I think I encourage everyone, you can create your own version of this at home and, shut down all technology, unplug everything, be by candlelight for an entire day and read beautiful poetry and meditate. And you can create this at home. It's harder, but it's up to you to have that responsibility. I think a lot of people think, well, I can't afford to go sit for 10 days in meditation. Like I can't afford it. I can't leave my job. That's not reality for me. Right. Or I can't go to Mexico on a yoga retreat. Like I have, 4 kids at home. Whatever the excuses are, which are real valid excuses, you can create this at home.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage people, don't feel discouraged by price tags or I can't go there. There is a way if you take the time to carve out healing for you. And as you said, it could look like therapy. It could look like ayahuasca. It could look like lots of different things to different people.
Right.
But don't allow life's circumstances to rob you of that healing process because you can create it anywhere at any time.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like, you're really reminding me of this thing that Naval Ravikant said. He was like, money only fixes money problems. And after that, you still got a world of problems, So I think our generation is probably one of the first to really deeply feel that you can't buy your way to happiness. And not only that, not only like you can't buy your way to happiness, but you also can't have another person constantly make you happy. So understanding these two big truths has really created this explosion of wellness around the world. Because now a lot of people are like, okay, well, I still want to be happy. Like, I'm not trying to be miserable all the time. So what can I do? And that directly points you to your inner world. And it's like, what is going to be your method to be able to traverse and explore your own inner sanctum, whatever is going on in there. And I really, I talk about this a lot, especially in my talks. Like, we live in a special time in human history. All throughout the world, it is undeniable that there are so many effective healing techniques that are available to people now, unlike any other time before. And we still have a ways to go in regards to accessibility, but it's undeniable that these techniques are more accessible than they've ever been to a wider group of people. So I really agree, if you can go away to like have a retreat or go to, go to something that helps you really connect with yourself and gives you some real tools, then fantastic. I definitely encourage you to do it. But if you can't, then there's just like all these apps. There are just things that can, help you walk through this within your own world. And I don't know, there's just so much out there. And I think it's really special because sometimes it seems a little daunting that there are so many different tools available that I really recommend to people. You want to find something that is challenging but not overwhelming. You want to find that sweet spot where, okay, this thing here, because not everyone is necessarily ready to meditate. Not everyone's like ready to do yoga. Some people may really need like a therapist or someone to help them cultivate that honesty, learn some tools to be able to engage with themselves. But people just need very different things because though our minds are similar in the way that they're structured, the contents of our minds are very different, right? Like the three of us, we've all had very different histories. But, at the end of the day, we all have things we can let go of. We've all felt very intense emotions. We're all, trying to live beyond our patterns. But what we're actually contained, what is actually contained within us is very, very unique. So because of that uniqueness, then that means that, not everyone's going to benefit from the same exact technique. And I think having respect for that and just being like, okay, this works for you, that's great. I'm happy that it works for you. Because at the end of the day, like, what does it matter if we're all doing the same thing? It doesn't matter at all. I think what's most important is that you're less harmful to yourself and you're less harmful to other people. And through that basis of like individual transformation, I think we're going to really see like big shifts in like our global structure. I think more and more people are going to create a more, a better world.
I love that.
I love that. And it's exactly the way I talk to people about mental health and addiction is find the tools that work for you. It doesn't matter what worked for other people. You can use that as examples and guideposts in terms of where to look. But if it didn't work for you, it doesn't matter that it worked for 100 other people. It's not working for you. Go try something else. Do you mind digging in a little bit? Because I don't know this background. You talked about the depression and anxiety and things like that made you go do the search yourself.
Yeah.
You've now done the search. What were some of the anchors? What were some of the things that you now know you were attached to that were bringing about the depression and the anxiety? And then would you mind talking about the process you went through to release them?
Yeah, definitely. I think the most harm that I've caused to myself has been due to my attachment to pleasure, wanting more of things that felt good, whatever the thing was. It could be anything. I started realizing that I spent so much of my life, especially my very early 20s, trying to surround myself with people so that I wouldn't have to be alone with myself. And, and like pleasure in the sense of like anything, like just hanging out with people, having fun, joking around, and then also including like going to parties, drinking a lot, doing drugs, just like constantly focused on gaining pleasure. And I didn't know, I thought that was life. That's what you're supposed to do is like have fun, enjoy. But I realized that I wasn't actually enjoying anything. I wasn't actually experiencing real joy. All I was doing was just going through this dark tunnel of deeper seeking of pleasure. And that became very clear to me after meditating a lot. I think even especially like I've done a number of 10-day courses, but I've been able to do like longer courses, like 20 and 30-day courses. And I remember like just really clearly seeing how my attachment to pleasure was just creating my own misery in such a profound, fundamental way, where I developed a new respect for craving and really understood that like I do not need to fulfill every craving that I have. Like literally, if I tried to, I would be sick. And more so, there's a lot more joy and happiness that comes simply from literally existing here and now, being present with my wife, being present with my family, and literally like, taking a moment to like really look at a tree or like really read a book or just be here. Like I get so much more satisfaction and joy as opposed to like the hunt, of like, what else am I going to do? Because I think I spent these years where like I really enjoyed partying and I needed like everything to be perfect, like I'd want to replicate the same situation over and over and over again. And I would find so much dissatisfaction in that process because you literally can't, because everything is just changing too fast. You can't have things be the same.
Totally. I so identify with the wanting to surround yourself with people and at the same time, or as a replacement, numb yourself out with things so that you don't have to be with yourself. What was like, I know for me, that voice inside was always that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't fit in, that people didn't really like me unless I was inebriated or had drugs for people or had a bunch of money. Are you aware now, like having done all that inner searching, what that drive, like what were you trying to ignore internally?
Yeah, it's funny, just going back to what you said in the beginning there, one of the things I really noticed was that I was an actor, like I was constantly performing. I was constantly creating versions of myself that were like far from the truth, but were things that I thought people wanted of me. Yeah. So this is the way I had to perform. And, I really like, I love to make jokes and I love to be funny, but I don't like to do that all the time. But then that was like the role that I gave myself when I would like go out to parties and, do all these things to just think that I was satisfying other people when in actuality, they were doing the same thing. They were also performing and putting on versions of theirs. So it's just like this giant theater that we're all like hanging out inside of. Can you remind me the question again?
Yeah, it's just like I know some of the internal thoughts about not fitting in and not being liked and not being good enough were the things that were pushing my need for distraction.
Yeah.
I needed other people to act for. And by the way, them being there was proof that I was good enough. So I would do whatever it took to have them there. I'm wondering if you're aware of some of that internal dialogue, and what was your motivation to try to escape? Like what thoughts were you trying to run away from?
I think it was like this looming kind of giant like sadness. I think it's funny because I've been writing and thinking a lot more about how every emotion does not require a narrative. I think a lot of people will just feel things before they're even realizing, why they're feeling it. And then they'll try to create a reason why. So like a lot of times, like a good example is like, let's say you're married and your wife comes home or you get home from work or whatnot, and you're already had like a long, tough day. And then that emotion inside of you will try, that like turbulence will try to expand itself. And then it will quickly, try to create some issue. Then all of a sudden, you're in conflict with each other.
Fighting, yeah.
Very unnecessarily so, simply because the emotion was seeking to grow and expand, because all emotions, whether it's like love or anger, they try to expand. They try to like encapsulate beyond the body and have other people join them. But understanding that like not everything requires a narrative really helped me see myself when I was younger, because I think I've just always been inclined, like that was the way my mind was set up, was like inclined towards sadness or inclined towards whatever, or anxiety, because it didn't, I had a tough life growing up in the sense that we were poor. Like I remember we were really poor and it was difficult, but there weren't like particular traumatic moments like from my parents or anything like that that made, my sadness appear. It was more so like that's the way I was biologically made. And when I started, really running away from that, it got worse. Especially like, my late teens, early 20s. And then I started seeing how I'm just, if I continue running away from it, it's going to compound. And the only way to really be able to deal with it is just to like deal with it head on. And I would notice these moments where if I wasn't high and I was alone and I wasn't on my computer and I didn't have some sort of distraction, then this like huge emotion of lack, of like, not feeling adequate would just appear, and it would be so, over consuming that I had to distract myself in some way. But it was just a looming monster. Yeah.
So beautiful. It brings me great pain and like heartbreak that we all grew up in this way where we weren't taught, we weren't given the skills or the comfort or the guidance to take care of ourselves in that way. Like it's really frustrating to me that, our parents didn't sit us down at 14 and say like, you're going to go to a therapist every other week. Here's why. You're going to go to this yoga class or this mindfulness thing. And, like why at our rec centers, although like it is changing right now, but like, why wasn't there free mindfulness classes after school the way that there is like, like soccer?
Yeah.
Why isn't there a YMCA for mind, like taking care of our mind and our spirit, and it's very separated from religion in my mind. It's very separate. Taking care of your spirit and your soul is just, again, it's just taking care of yourself to help you feel whole so you can better interact with the universe, with your world. And I hope that we can all parent differently. You said you have kids?
No, not yet. I have a wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's the biggest heartbreak of everything, is just like, fine that I didn't have that and that we didn't have that, but now we have the awareness and this is what we do and we walk the walk. My 7-year-old's struggling right now, and so we're going to get him a therapist, and she teaches mindfulness for kids. And like, he keeps asking now, I didn't tell you, but he keeps asking when is that woman coming? And because I said, you're going to get some time. Like, I'm going to help you. Like, we're going to figure this out. And I walked him through it. Like, he wants to be helped. He doesn't want to behave, in a naughty way. Like, he doesn't want to act out. He's doing what he can based on what he he can, with what he's been given. And he is the way he is, and he's made up with more physical energy and X, Y, and Z. But like, we all need someone to talk to and to learn new skill sets of how to take care of ourselves. And it's not fair to send these kids out into the world as, preteens and then teenagers, when it's the most hormonal, confusing time as ever, without proper tools to know how to self-soothe.
Exactly.
Like it's scary that we're just sending children out there to then expect to be teenagers and be able to navigate that world. It's like, it should be required that you learn how different tools, every year to self-soothe and to take care of ourselves and to help us, fine tune our spiritual side.
Yeah, I think, it's big. It's funny because I had a conversation with my wife's mother, and she was like telling me about, these things that she was upset about that she didn't teach her kids. And I was like, how can you blame yourself for, you can't blame individuals for structural problems. Even though all individuals collectively create society, as one individual, it's like, you can't take it upon yourself. Like, if you didn't know, you didn't know, and that's why our generation, like, we do know. So we have to create these things and embed them into our structures, so that our superstructure completely supports mental health, and it has a wide range of tools so that people can not only, self-soothe, but they can develop self-awareness, they can develop wisdom, they can develop, high functionality during stressful times, and, in a really good ability to just see multiple perspectives. Because so much of our issues and conflicts come from, being so tied into our own perspective that I literally cannot see what you're thinking, but, and it's funny because the Buddha, I think, talked about how enlightenment was just being able to see more and more and more and more perspectives. But, that's our job. That's literally like what we're here to do, is to be able to enhance this, the way that we can not only take care of our mind, but like expand our minds and heal them and be able to make them really, truly powerful, because they are quite powerful if we cultivate them.
Absolutely. I love that. And obviously that's a lot of the work that you're doing, is in making those concepts accessible, so that people can then pursue them in their own lives and find their own idiosyncratic perspectives and angles, so that we can all connect in that way. And it's amazing. It's beautiful to see the growth and how much it resonated, because obviously that means you hit a nerve.
Yeah, it's been cool seeing it all grow, and how it's, really connecting with people. And I'm glad, because I try to keep it simple. Like, I want to talk about things that are profound in a simple manner, simply because, like, I know that everybody's busy. Like, I know everybody's really, really busy. And we only have so much time to give. So that's why I've always leaned into the minimalistic format, because it's like, let's see how clear we can be without giving you like a giant book to read. Sure. And I think because of the minimalism and because of the fact that like our minds really are structured the same way, a lot of times people will be like, well, talk to me about, how are you reading my mind? Like, how do you know, like, this post, like, it's exactly what I need to see. Well, it's like, because we're all agitated, we all feel sadness. We all feel anger. We all feel like joy. So to be able to, bounce between them in a much healthier way is everybody's job.
Absolutely.
So true.
So we ask all of our guests 5 questions. So just the first thing that comes to mind, what has been your proudest moment to date?
Proudest moment. I think the last 30-day course that I sat, I think it was January to February, I sat of this 2019, sat a 30-day meditation course. It was my second one. And the first 30-day course that I sat, I got my butt kicked. I was getting tossed around. Like, my mind was just showing me the darkest parts of it. And I was like, dang, I was like, there's a lot of work to do. But then the second time I did this 30-day course, I was really able to not only practice better, like the way that I'm being asked to practice, to actually be able, because it's so funny how quickly, when you're doing the practice, then like all these things come up that you have to release. But so quickly in that moment of things coming up, we get lost and we can't quite find our footing, and we actually forget to practice properly. So being able to smooth out that process and be like, okay, yeah, things are coming up, and not getting caught up in the narratives that are happening in my mind, and instead, actually continue to meditate. I think that was definitely one of the proudest moments of my life, that I was able to, at the very least, get a little bit better at what I spend so much time doing.
Oh, that's
Such
awesome.
a challenge.
It's funny. I feel like that answer also encapsulated the next one, but to flip, what's been one of your most difficult moments?
I think difficult moments is like, I think on the outside world, like the Yung Pueblo stuff, it's been amazing being able to serve people in this way. But the difficult moment in the sense that being able to move at my own pace, like being able to like truly, like, yes, I'm busy. I do a lot of events. I do, speaking, and the inbox is full and all that stuff. So being able to properly manage that while at the same time maintaining some freedom in my life so that I can continue writing, I think that has definitely been like a difficult, like, I wouldn't say the most difficult thing that's ever happened, but a difficult thing that's happened recently is just trying to like balance all of that. Because when I initially created Yung Pueblo and all this stuff, like my inbox was empty. There was nobody was trying to talk to me, and having all that space was fantastic, because I really got to just focus on myself, focus on the art. And now that, a lot more people are trying to contact me, it's like less time to be really, really creative, but I've been able to like balance that out a little bit.
That's awesome. So a lot of artists say that in music, that, the first album they had 15, 20 years to create. And all of a sudden they've got to knock one out every year.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough to deliver like that. You're doing it. So that's amazing. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice. I really like these questions. Thank you. The best advice, probably, two things. I think one was, a friend of mine said, meditate when you want to meditate, and meditate when you don't want to meditate. and I was like, all right, that's where it is, and that's helped me a lot, especially because I do meditate every day, 2 times a day, in the morning and the evening. And like sometimes I really don't, but like, especially in those times when I don't want to, like that's when I'm going to get some good work done. And the other advice has been like, I got this one recently that I heard. It was an advice given to somebody else, but I was there listening to it, and it really hit me. Just that, just to accept, like I would fight myself so much, or I'd see like different things happening in my mind, especially when I'm meditating, and I'd be like, oh, and I'd be reacting to them because I'm like, oh, I don't want to be like that. That's not actually who I am. But I would spend so much time reacting to the mean thoughts instead of just like letting them be, like as long as they don't control my actions, then that's what matters the most. But let the narrative play itself out, and, allow it to exhaust itself, as opposed to fighting it. Because the moment I'm fighting it, it's just becoming bigger and stronger and gaining more energy. And it's, more so becoming a part of my identity. But if I just, as things happen, especially when I'm meditating, just accept, just like, just observe, just accept, and things will be much more productive.
I love that. So other than meditation, do you have any other self-care practices that keep you balanced, when you start to feel a little cray-cray?
Yeah, I got this new one recently that's been amazing. I still haven't talked to the guy, but I've been following Dr. Mark Hyman's 10-day detox. Mm-hmm. You know that? And that's been my jam. Like I did his 10-day detox for the first time in November, and it's helped me so much in terms of just like decreasing the inflammation in my body, and then having so much inflammation decrease that I not only like felt better and felt healthier, but my mind was like even sharper. I was so much more creative. So now that I have that in my back pocket, like whenever things get, Like when I just don't feel well or feel cloudy, then I'm going to make sure to do that 10-day detox over and over and over again.
Awesome.
I have a superfood company called Philosophy, and I have the same thing for years, almost 10 years now. I created them for myself, and now I sell them on my website.
Nice.
But same idea. Like we have a 5-day, a 14-day, a 10-day, and they're just resets. It's just a reset.
Yeah.
And like we can do that in meditation. We can, sometimes we need to be refluffed with working out, like switch things up. And for me, doing a cleanse or like a detox program for even 3 days, it affects every part of your system. Like it's not just about the food we're eating. It is, but it's everything.
So, yeah, it's so surprising. And I had no idea how addicted I was to sugar.
Yeah.
And how much that was affecting me. And not just like sugar, like ice cream sugar, but like sugar, like in grapes, and like eating too many fruits. Yeah. And seeing how that could also affect me negatively was like a big shock.
Yeah. Awareness is everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So this podcast is called Ignited. We like to ask all of our guests, what gets you ignited?
Honestly, at the end of when I have events, like at the end of them, when I see that so many people are actively trying to heal themselves, and like I let people know, all throughout human history, there have always been groups of people who have wanted to change the world for the better, but this is the first time in human history where not only people will continue trying to change the world for the better, but they're going to have the tools to simultaneously transform themselves. That's going to make all of our movements, like all the things that we want to create in the world, so much more powerful, and we'll be so much less likely to recreate, the fear and the craving and all these things that created our society in the first place. We'll be able to not allow them to dominate our actions. So when I see how many people, around the country, around the world are actively working on healing themselves, that gets me so ignited about the future. Because I really feel like the Yung Pueblo work, I'm just trying to build frameworks for people to think inside of, like as they, do their healing work. And it's happening. It's happening on the individual level and the societal level.
That's beautiful.
Great. Love that.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks for the answers to those questions. Those are always an amazing part of this. And thanks for all the work that you do, helping people everywhere connect and find what it is that they need to work on so that they can go do it and make the world a better place.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you both so much. It was honestly a joy and an honor to spend time with the both of you. And I wish you both the best.
You too.
Thank you. Same to you. Everybody tuned in. Do us a favor. I mean, you're probably following Yung Pueblo already anyway, but take a little screenshot right now, share with us, tag the three of us and Ignited, and let us know what resonated, right? What about this has already impacted your life, and what are you changing? What are you going to start bringing in?
Nice.
Thank you. See you all next week.
Mwah.
Bye.
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 Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.